I stared at my phone screen, frozen in that specific brand of horror reserved for modern catastrophes. The little red heart glowed accusingly beneath a photo of Damien Cross standing on what looked like a yacht deck, Monaco's glittering coastline behind him. The timestamp read, June 2022. 3 years ago. My thumb had slipped. One moment I'd been scrolling through his barely active Instagram research. I'd told myself, just due diligence before tomorrow's gallery opening where his foundation was the primary sponsor, and the next, I'd descended into the dangerous territory of old posts. Then my cat, Sardine, had leaped onto my lap, and my thumb had committed digital suicide. I unliked it immediately. 5 seconds, maybe 7. But we both knew the truth. Instagram sent those notifications instantly. Shit, I whispered into my studio apartment, where half-finished paintings leaned against exposed brick walls like drunken guests. Shit, shit, shit. Damien Cross would now know that at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, I'd been deep-diving his social media history. He'd think I was obsessed, or unhinged, or worse, one of those artists who researched their patrons with stalker-level intensity, which, to be mortifyingly fair, I was. I set my phone face down on my thrift store coffee table and tried to breathe. He probably wouldn't even notice. Men like Damien Cross, venture capitalist, art collector, certified member of Seattle's untouchable elite, probably received hundreds of notifications daily. My little heart would drown in a sea of sycophantic comments and thirst traps. My phone buzzed. I closed my eyes, counted to 10, opened them. The notification banner made my stomach drop. Damien Cross sent you a message. No. I picked up my phone with trembling fingers. Absolutely not. But I opened it. Of course I opened it. Stalking me, Alara? 2 words. A question mark like a knife point. My full name, which meant he'd actually looked at my profile. Heat crawled up my neck. I typed and deleted 4 different responses before settling on research. You're sponsoring tomorrow's exhibition. 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. At 11:47 p.m., thorough. I could hear the amusement in words that had no sound. Something about that irritated me past my embarrassment. I like to know who I'm dealing with. And what did you learn? That you're beautiful in a way that makes my hands want to paint you. I didn't type. That something about your eyes in every photo looks carefully empty. That you haven't posted anything personal in 8 months. That you vacation in Monaco 3 years ago. You scrolled far. Cat jumped on my lap. Blame the cat. Classic. I found myself almost smiling despite the mortification. Then his next message appeared. What else did you learn, artist? The way he wrote artist felt specific, weighted. I pulled my knees to my chest, phone glowing in the dark. That you collect art but never smile in front of it. That you attend every charity gala but leave before the dancing. That people stand too close to you in photos, but you never touch them back. I hit send before I could reconsider. Too honest, too observant, too perceptive. 1 word, then, I'll see you tomorrow, Alara. Try not to like any more of my photos. The conversation ended there. I sat in my apartment's darkness, heart doing something arrhythmic. Outside, Seattle's autumn rain started, soft and insistent against the windows. I should have felt relieved, maybe amused. Instead, I felt watched. I got up and checked the locks on my door, something I never did. Through the window, the street below looked ordinary. A few parked cars, a taxi passing, nothing. But my hands were shaking when I set my phone down. I tried to paint, but the canvas mocked me. Tried to sleep, but kept checking my phone. At 2 a.m., I finally dozed off with my hand under my pillow, fingers curled around nothing. I dreamed of Monaco's coastline and eyes that looked carefully empty. The Westlake Gallery hummed with opening night energy, champagne glasses clinking, designer heels clicking on polished concrete, voices pitched at that particular frequency of people trying to sound cultured. My 3 paintings hung in the emerging artists section, smaller than the featured works but positioned well enough to catch light from the floor to ceiling windows. I wore the only dress I owned that didn't have paint stains. Black, simple, ending just above my knees. My hair was twisted up, showing the small scar on my left shoulder, a studio accident from years ago that I'd stopped hiding. Alara Chen? A woman in a severe gray suit appeared at my elbow. Mr. Cross would like to meet you. My throat went dry. Now? If you're available. I wasn't. I was profoundly unavailable. But I followed her anyway, weaving through clusters of Seattle's art world elite, until we reached a quieter corner where the acoustics changed. He stood with his back to us, studying a massive abstract piece, all violent reds and blacks slashing across canvas. He wore a charcoal suit that fit like it had been constructed specifically for his frame. Dark hair, slightly longer than current fashion dictated, tall enough that I had to tilt my chin up when he finally turned. Elara Chen. My name in his mouth sounded different than it had in my head. Thank you for coming. It's my opening. The words came out sharper than intended. I live here. Something flickered in his eyes, amusement or approval. I couldn't tell. Up close, he was disorienting. Handsome in that specific way that felt weaponized. Strong jaw, straight nose, lips that suggested cruelty and softness in equal measure. But it was his eyes that arrested me. Dark gray, almost colorless in the gallery's cool light. Carefully empty, just like in his photos. Except when they landed on me, something shifted. A hairline crack in perfect ice. Your work, he said, nodding toward my section. The triptych. Witnesses. Tell me about it. I glanced at my paintings, 3 canvases depicting the same woman's face in progressive states of dissolution. From solid form to abstract fragmentation. It's about what we lose when we're seen by the wrong person. Or the right person. There's a difference? He smiled, barely. Perhaps not. A man approached, older, expensive suit. The kind of confidence that came from inherited wealth. Damien, we need to discuss the Mercer acquisition. Later, Richard. Damien's voice didn't rise, but Richard stopped mid-sentence. Of course, later. He disappeared into the crowd. I watched this exchange with a painter's eye for power dynamics. Damien hadn't moved, hadn't threatened, but Richard had obeyed like a trained dog. You dismiss people easily, I observed. I dismiss interruptions. He shifted slightly, and suddenly we were standing closer than strangers should. I could smell his cologne, something with cedar and smoke. You're not an interruption. What am I? I haven't decided yet. The honesty startled me. Most men in his position would have offered polished flattery. Instead, he looked at me like I was a problem requiring careful analysis. Your paintings disturb people, he continued. That woman's face. They keep looking away, then looking back. You've made something they can't comfortably consume. That was the intention. Because you want to disturb them, or because you want them to understand what it feels like to be consumed. My breath caught. Nobody had read my work that precisely before. Both, I admitted. He nodded slowly, something satisfied in his expression. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed, jaw tightening, shoulders squaring. When he looked up, the careful emptiness was back, total and impenetrable. I need to leave. He pulled a card from his inner pocket. Heavy stock, minimal design, just a name and a number. Call me tomorrow. I'd like to commission something. I don't do commissions. You will for this one. He stepped closer, and my back pressed against the gallery wall. His voice dropped. You asked what you learned about me. Now let me tell you what I learned about you, Elara. You notice things, details that other people miss. That's useful. Useful for what? For staying alive. He was gone before I could respond, melting into the crowd with the ease of someone who knew how to disappear. I stood against the wall, his card burning in my hand, trying to understand what had just happened. Around me, the gallery continued its champagne circulation, but I felt like I'd just had a completely different conversation than the one that had occurred. Later, after most guests had left, I stood before my triptych and saw what I hadn't before. In the background of the third painting, the most fragmented, I'd unconsciously painted a shadow, just a suggestion of a figure watching the dissolving woman. My hand had known something my conscious mind hadn't. I looked down at Damien's card. No title, no company name, just Damien Cross and a number. On the back, handwritten in precise script, tomorrow, 3 p.m., the address below, come alone. An address in Pioneer Square, a neighborhood I knew by reputation, renovated warehouses, expensive lofts, and according to rumors, several buildings owned by people who didn't advertise their business holdings. I should have thrown the card away. Instead, I tucked it into my purse and felt that same irrational certainty I'd felt last night. Something was watching me, and now it had a name. The building looked abandoned. Brick facade, metal-framed windows, the kind of industrial architecture that Seattle had been converting into luxury spaces for a decade. But this one still wore its warehouse skin, no trendy signage, no art gallery pretense. Just a number, 47. I checked Damien's card for the third time. This was the address. Rain fell in that persistent Seattle way, not dramatic but inescapable. My jacket was already soaked. It was 2:57 p.m. I'd spent the entire morning telling myself I wouldn't come, then gotten on the bus anyway. The door was unlocked. Inside, the space opened into something unexpected. Exposed beams, polished concrete floors, and surprisingly warm light from industrial fixtures. But it wasn't designed for living. The far wall held a massive desk, sleek and minimal. Filing cabinets, a leather sofa that looked like it cost more than my annual rent, and Damien, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the street. Phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what Constantine wants," he said, voice flat. "Tell him the waterfront stays neutral, or I personally burn every shipment coming through his dock." A pause. No, not a negotiation. A statement. He ended the call and turned. His expression when he saw me was unreadable. "You came. You said 3 p.m. I stayed near the door, suddenly aware of how isolated this building felt. "What is this place?" "Somewhere I work." "On what?" "Projects that require discretion." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." He crossed the space toward me, and I fought the urge to step back. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to crowd, far enough to give choice. "You said I was useful," I said. "Explain that." "You see things other people don't. You notice the way I stand in photographs, the way people position themselves around me. You're trained to observe. I'm a painter, not a detective. Sometimes they're the same thing." He tilted his head slightly. "What do you see right now, Alara?" I looked at him properly. Expensive suit, but the cuffs were slightly frayed. His knuckles on his right hand were bruised. There was a tension in his shoulders that didn't match his calm expression. And when he'd been on the phone, he'd used his body to block the window's instinctive protection against sightlines. "You're afraid of something," I said slowly. "Or expecting it." His smile was winter cold. "Good. That's not good. That's terrifying." "It should be." He moved to his desk, pulled something from a drawer. A photograph. He held it out. "Do you recognize her?" I took it carefully. A woman, maybe late 20s, standing outside a coffee shop I recognized 2 blocks from my studio. She wore nondescript clothing, had dark hair pulled back, and held her phone at an angle that suggested she'd been photographing something. "No. Should I?" "She's been following you for 3 days. The room tilted. "What?" "Since the gallery opening. Maybe before." Damien's voice stayed level, but something dangerous moved behind his eyes. "Someone is watching you, Alara, and I need to know why." I'm nobody. I paint. I live alone. I barely leave my studio except for..." I stopped. "Is this because of you? Because I talked to you?" "Possibly." The casual admission made my hands shake. I set the photograph on his desk before I could drop it. "I'm calling the police." "No." One word, absolute. "You're not. You can't stop me." "I can, but I won't need to. Because the police can't help you with this." He pulled up something on his phone, turned it toward me. Security footage, grainy but clear enough. The woman from the photo, standing across from my building at 2 a.m. Watching my window, my blood went cold. "Who is she?" "I don't know yet. But I know she's not police, not press, not random." He pocketed his phone. "Someone sent her. Someone who wants to know about you. Why? That's what I'm trying to determine." I backed toward the door. This was insane. I should run. I should. "There's something you should understand," Damien said quietly. "About me. About what I do. I don't want to know." "You already do. Somewhere in that observant mind of yours, you've already put it together." I thought about the phone call. The threat delivered with bureaucratic boredom. The bruised knuckles. The warehouse that wasn't really a warehouse. The way Richard had obeyed him with frightened immediacy. "You're a criminal," I whispered. "I'm a businessman who operates in gray spaces. Shipping, real estate, acquisitions. Some legal, some..." He shrugged, elegant and terrifying. "Pragmatic. The Mafia. An outdated term. But close enough." The room spun. I reached for the door handle. "If you leave," Damien said, "she'll still be out there, watching, waiting. You can pretend you don't know, but ignorance won't protect you now. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked. And because you deserve honesty before you make your choice." "What choice?" He crossed to me slowly, giving me time to bolt if I wanted. When he reached me, he placed one hand on the door above my shoulder, not trapping, just present. Let me find out who sent her. Let me protect you until this resolves." His voice dropped. "Or walk away and hope they lose interest. Those are both terrible options." "Yes." His face was inches from mine. I could see a small scar above his left eyebrow, could smell that cedar and smoke scent, could feel the heat of his body despite the cold rain outside. "Why do you care?" I asked. "You don't know me." Something shifted in his expression, that hairline crack widening. "I know you notice things. I know you paint women being consumed because you understand what it means to be seen by the wrong person." He paused. "And I know you're not afraid of me, even though you should be. I am afraid of you. No. You're afraid of the situation. There's a difference." His hand lifted from the door, and suddenly I could see the bruised knuckles up close, recent. "I won't hurt you, Ilara. That's not what this is." "Then what is this?" "I don't know yet." The honesty again, raw and startling. "But I know I saw your paintings, and I saw you, and when I found out someone was watching you," his jaw tightened. "I need to know why." The rain intensified outside, drumming against the warehouse roof. "If I say yes," I said carefully. "What does that mean?" "It means you stay close. It means you let me assign someone to watch your building. It means you trust me enough to tell me if anything strange happens." "I don't trust you." "Smart." He smiled, and for the first time it looked genuine. "But you're still here." I was. "God help me, I was." 2 days, I said. "You have 2 days to figure this out. Then I'm going to the police. Gray spaces or not. Deal." He extended his hand. I stared at it, bruised knuckles, long fingers, a silver ring on his right hand that looked old and expensive. I shook it. His grip was warm, firm, and somehow felt like I'd just signed something far more binding than a simple agreement. When I left the warehouse, the rain had stopped, but I felt the weight of eyes on my back all the way home. This time, I knew exactly who was watching. The man sitting in my studio's only comfortable chair introduced himself as Victor. "Just Victor?" I asked, clutching my keys like a weapon. "Just Victor." He was maybe 40, built like a retired boxer, with kind eyes that didn't match the gun I could see beneath his jacket. "Mr. Cross sent me. I'll be stationed outside your building. You won't see me, but I'll be there." "That's not comforting." "It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be effective." He stood, making my small studio feel impossibly smaller. "You have my number. Anything unusual, anyone asking questions, strange phone calls, mail you don't recognize, you text me immediately. And you'll what? Shoot them? Depends on who they are." He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing weather patterns. After he left, I locked every lock and then painted for 6 straight hours, angry, violent strokes that left my hands aching. The canvas became something monstrous. A figure made entirely of watching eyes. At midnight, my phone buzzed. "How's Victor?" "Damien." Terrifying. "He has a gun. Everyone has a gun. I don't." "That's because you create violence on canvas. Some of us require more practical tools." I stared at that message, trying to parse if he was joking. "Did you find anything?" "Still looking." "The woman's name is Irina Volkov. Works freelance surveillance, usually Eastern European employers. That's all I have so far." "Should I know what that means?" "It means someone paid cash for discretion, which means they don't want documentation." "Damien, I'm scared." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. When his response finally came, it was just, "I know. Sleep with your phone charged. Victor's outside." I didn't sleep. Morning brought fog and a text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions about me. Last warning." My hands shook as I forwarded it to Victor and Damien simultaneously. Victor appeared at my door in 4 minutes. Damien called 60 seconds later. "Pack a bag," he said without preamble. "Enough for 3 days." "What?" "No, that text means they know I'm investigating, which means they're watching both of us. Your apartment isn't safe. Where am I supposed to go? Somewhere they can't follow." An hour later, I stood in the marble lobby of a building that probably violated several wealth inequality statistics. Victor had driven me in a car with tinted windows, using a route that seemed to involve doubling back several times. The penthouse elevator required a key card. "Top floor," Victor said. "Mr. Cross is waiting." "This is his building?" "One of them." The elevator doors opened directly into an apartment that belonged in Architectural Magazine's floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Minimal furniture in blacks and grays, art on the walls that I recognized from auction catalogs. Damien stood by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He ended the call when he saw me. "Alara, this is insane," I said. "I should be at the police station." "Saying what? That someone sent you a vague text? That you're being followed by a professional who's left no legal evidence?" He crossed toward me. "They'd file a report. Maybe send a patrol car by your building once a night, and you'd still be exposed. And here I'm just trapped. Here you're secure." He gestured toward a hallway. "Guest room is second door. Private bathroom. Anything you need." I looked around the space. Beautiful, cold, impersonal. "You don't actually live here." "I keep several properties." "That's not what I asked." His expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. "No, I don't live here. I keep it for situations requiring discretion." "You mean for hiding people?" "Among other uses." I dropped my bag on the pristine floor. "I want answers. Real ones. Who's after me and why?" Damien was quiet for a long moment, measuring something behind his eyes. Then he walked to a drawer, pulled out a file folder, and handed it to me. Inside were surveillance photos not of me, but of him. Damien entering buildings, shaking hands with men I didn't recognize, standing on docks with shipping containers in the background. Someone had been documenting his movements for months. 3 weeks ago, he said quietly, someone started investigating my operations. Quietly, professionally. I've been trying to identify who. What does this have to do with me? You were photographed with me at the gallery. 30 seconds of conversation, caught by 3 different cameras. Whoever's investigating me now thinks you're connected, but I'm not. They don't know that. He took the folder back. To them, you're leverage, or information, or bait. The implications settled over me like cold water. So I'm collateral damage in someone's vendetta against you. Yes, at least he didn't lie. Who's investigating you? I asked. A rival? Police? That's what I'm trying to determine. He moved to a laptop on the kitchen counter, turned it toward me. Security footage played the same woman, Irina Volkov, meeting with a man in a parking garage. The video had no sound, but their body language suggested disagreement. Recognize him? Damien asked. I studied the man's profile. Older, expensive suit, graying hair, something familiar. That's Richard, I said. From the gallery. The one you dismissed. Damien's jaw tightened. You're certain? Positive. He wanted to discuss the Mercer acquisition. Fuck. Damien closed the laptop with barely controlled violence. Richard Mercer. I should have seen it. Who is he? Someone who believes he's entitled to territory I control. Someone I recently refused to partner with on a development project. He pulled out his phone, typed something. Someone who apparently decided to escalate. By targeting me? Why? Damien looked at me then, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Because he's not just investigating my business, Alara. He's looking for weaknesses. Personal ones. I'm not your weakness. I barely know you. He doesn't know that. He saw me talk to you. Saw me give you my card. Saw me commission your work. His voice dropped. And he's gambling that I'll care what happens to you. Will you? The question hung between us. Yes, Damien said finally. I will. The admission felt dangerous. Outside, fog swallowed the city. Inside, the penthouse felt like a beautiful cage. I thought about my studio, my paintings, my ordinary life that had somehow shattered in 3 days. How long do I have to stay here? I asked. Until I can make Richard understand that you're not a viable target. How will you do that? His smile was winter returning. By being very clear about consequences. I should have asked what that meant. Should have demanded details. Instead, I just nodded, because some part of me already understood. Damien Cross didn't negotiate. He eliminated variables, and I had just become a variable that required protecting. That night, I lay in a guest bed that cost more than my annual income and listened to the city's muffled sounds through soundproof windows. My phone sat on the nightstand, charged and close. At 2 a.m., it buzzed. Can't sleep? Damien. How did you know I was awake? I'm 3 doors down. I can hear you moving. Something about that made my stomach flip. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow I remind Richard Mercer why people don't challenge me. Should I be afraid of you? The typing indicator appeared for a long time. When his response came, it was just, probably. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling until dawn. I woke to the smell of coffee and something baking. The penthouse's kitchen was full of morning light, and Damien stood at the counter in dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He was plating what looked like homemade pastries with the precision of someone accustomed to control. "You cook?" I said from the doorway. He glanced up. "Occasionally. When circumstances require normalcy." He gestured to the counter. "Sit." I climbed onto a bar stool, feeling rumpled in my sleep clothes while he looked like he'd stepped from a magazine. He set a plate before me, some kind of Danish, still warm. "Cherry and cream cheese," he said. "Coffee's in the French press." I stared at the pastry. "You bake." My mother insisted I learn. She said men who can't feed themselves end up dependent on others. Something complicated crossed his face. She died believing I'd use the skill domestically, instead of while hiding witnesses in your penthouse. I don't have witnesses often. He poured 2 cups of coffee. "Mostly just you." We ate in strange silence, not uncomfortable, but waited. Through the windows, Seattle was waking up, ferries cutting across gray water. "Richard will expect a meeting," Damien said finally. "Probably at his club. Somewhere he feels he has advantage. And you'll go?" "Yes, with conditions." He set his cup down. "You'll stay here. Victor will remain outside. Another associate, Elena, will be stationed in the building's lobby. I'm not a prisoner. You're a responsibility I chose to assume." His gray eyes held mine. "That means protecting you whether you like it or not. You don't even know me. I know you didn't run when you could have. I know you notice details about me that no one else has. I know you paint women being consumed because you understand what it means to be truly seen." He paused. "That's enough." My throat tightened. "You said I wasn't your weakness." I lied. The admission landed between us like something physical. I set my pastry down, suddenly not hungry. "Damien." His phone rang. He answered it in Italian, and I watched his expression shudder completely. When he hung up, his jaw was tight. "Richard wants to meet tonight, 7 p.m., his yacht club." That's fast. He's impatient. Or confident. Damien stood, began clearing plates with methodical movements. "I need to make arrangements. You'll be safe here. What if I don't want to be safe? What if I want to come with you?" "No. You can't just decide." "Ilara." He turned, and the look in his eyes stopped my argument. "This isn't a negotiation. Richard Mercer is dangerous. If he saw you with me, he'd use you. And I won't risk that. Because I'm your weakness. Because you're—" He stopped, jaw working. "Because I don't gamble with things I care about." The apartment felt suddenly too small, too charged. I stood, needing distance, and moved to the windows. Below, the city sprawled ordinary lives, ordinary problems. I felt Damien approach before I heard him. He stopped close enough that I could feel his warmth at my back. "Tell me about the woman in your paintings," he said quietly. "The one dissolving." "Why?" "Because I want to know what you're afraid of." I closed my eyes. Being seen so completely that there's nothing left that's mine. Being understood until I'm consumed. Losing myself to someone else's vision of who I should be. And yet you let strangers view your work. Strangers can only see what I show them. They can't see me. I turned, and he was closer than I'd expected. "You see me." "Yes. That terrifies me." "I know." His hand lifted, hesitated, then tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was so gentle it made my chest ache. "You terrify me too. I'm just a painter. You're someone who makes me want to be honest. That's more dangerous than you realize." His phone buzzed again. He ignored it. "Damien, 3 years ago," he said suddenly, "someone I cared about died because I brought her into my world. I swore I wouldn't make that mistake again. And then you liked a photo from Monaco, and I should have deleted your message. Should have stayed away. But I didn't. Why not? Because when I saw your paintings, I recognized something." His hand was still near my face, fingers curled in the air between us. "You paint what I feel. Consumption, dissolution, the fear of being truly known." My heart was doing something arrhythmic again. "Are you known?" "Not until you looked at my photographs and saw emptiness." His thumb brushed my cheekbone, barely a touch. "No one's seen that before." I should have stepped back. Should have reminded him that I was just collateral damage. Just a variable. Just someone who'd accidentally liked the wrong photo. Instead, I leaned into his touch. His breath caught. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then his phone rang for the 3rd time, and the spell broke. He stepped back, answering in clipped Italian. When he ended the call, His expression was shuttered again. I have to go. He grabbed his jacket from the sofa. Victor and Elena both have instructions. Don't leave the building. When will you be back? Late. After the meeting. He was at the elevator when I called out. Damien. He turned. Be careful. Something softened in his face. Always am. The elevator closed, and I was alone in the beautiful cold penthouse with the ghost of his touch still on my face. I tried to paint. The penthouse had a small room with good northern light, and Victor had brought my supplies from the studio. But my hands wouldn't cooperate. Every stroke felt wrong, unfinished. At 6 p.m., I gave up and showered, put on clean clothes, braided my hair. At 6:45, I stood at the windows and watched the city darken. At 7, my phone buzzed. Stay inside. No matter what you hear. Victor's message made my stomach clench. I typed back, what will I hear? No response. The minutes crawled past. I paced the penthouse, checked locks, double-checked them. At 8:17, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered against every instinct. Alara Chen? A man's voice. Smooth, educated, unfamiliar. Who is this? Richard Mercer. I believe you've heard my name. My blood went cold. How did you get this number? The same way I got photographs of you entering Damien's building. The same way I'll get photographs of you leaving. Eventually. He paused. I want to be very clear about something, Miss Chen. Whatever Damien has told you, whatever promises he's made, you're not safe with him. You're a liability he'll eventually eliminate. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why a man like Damien Cross would protect a stranger. Ask yourself what he really wants from you. Why are you calling me? To offer you a choice. Walk away now. Disappear. I'll ensure you're not followed. Or stay with Damien and accept what happens when his enemies decide you're too valuable to ignore. The line went dead. I stood frozen, phone clutched in my shaking hand. Outside, sirens rose in the distance. Seattle's ordinary chaos. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. My phone buzzed again. Meeting went poorly. On my way back. Don't open the door for anyone. Damien. I texted back. Richard called me. The response came immediately. What did he say? That I should ask what you really want from me. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared 3 times. Finally, I want you alive. That's all. I sat on the cold floor by the windows and hugged my knees to my chest. Below, the city glittered with lies. Damien returned at 11 p.m. with blood on his knuckles. I was still sitting by the windows when the elevator opened. He stepped out, saw me on the floor, and something in his expression cracked. Elara, is that your blood? I asked. Some of it. He crossed to the kitchen, turned on the faucet, began washing his hands with mechanical precision. Pink water swirled down the drain. I stood on shaking legs. What happened? Richard's more connected than I thought. He brought associates to the meeting. It became complicated. Complicated means violence in your world, doesn't it? Yes. He dried his hands on a towel, examining his split knuckles. He made threats. I responded. Lines were drawn. Lines about me? His jaw tightened. Partially. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed his hand, turned it toward the light. The knuckles were swelling. One cut, still bleeding slowly. I found a first aid kit under the sink because of course someone like Damien would have medical supplies readily available, and pulled out antiseptic. Sit, I ordered. He sat. I cleaned his knuckles carefully, feeling the weight of his attention on my face. His hands were larger than mine, scarred in ways that suggested this wasn't his first fight. He said I should ask what you really want from me, I said quietly. I told you. I know what you told me. I want to know what you didn't say. Damien was quiet for a long time. Outside, the city had gone dark, except for scattered lights, lonely windows in the urban sprawl. I saw your paintings, he said finally, and I recognized myself in that dissolving woman. Seen, consumed, fragmenting under observation. He paused. I've spent 15 years building walls, being empty, being careful. And then you looked at a 3-year-old photo and saw through all of it. My hands stilled on his knuckles. That scared you, terrified me, because it meant you could hurt me. He turned his hand over, caught mine, and then Richard started watching you. And I realized something worse, that I'd rather fight a war than let him use you, that I'd kill to keep you safe. That's what I want from you, Elara. The thing I can't afford to want. What's that? To be seen. Completely. by someone who won't look away. The admission hung between us, raw and dangerous. I finished bandaging his knuckles, but neither of us moved. His hand was warm in mine, calloused palms telling stories his mouth wouldn't. I should leave, I whispered. This isn't my world. I paint. I live quietly. I don't belong in violence. He stood, and suddenly we were too close, his hand still holding mine. Maybe not, but you belong in truth. And I can't give you much, but I can give you that. The truth is you're dangerous. Yes. The truth is people get hurt around you. Yes. The truth is I should run. Yes. His free hand lifted to my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone like it had that morning. But you're still here. I'm an idiot. You're brave. There's a difference. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was the kiss of someone who'd been carefully empty for too long, desperate and consuming and impossibly tender all at once. His hand cradled my face like I was something precious he'd already broken. And I found myself rising on my toes, fingers gripping his shirt, pulling him closer. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. That was a mistake, I said. Probably the worst one I've made. He rested his forehead against mine. But I'm not sorry. You should be. This complicates everything. Everything was already complicated the moment you liked that photo. I laughed, breathless and slightly hysterical. So this is your fault. Entirely my fault. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. But I need you to understand something. Richard knows now. He knows I care. And that makes you more valuable as leverage, not less. What does that mean? It means this gets more dangerous before it gets safer. It means I have to make decisions that might scare you. It means... His phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression went cold. What? Richard just posted something. He turned the phone toward me. It was a photo grainy, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. Me and Damien, standing in this kitchen an hour ago, his hands being bandaged. The caption read, "The artist and the monster, lovely composition." My stomach dropped. He can see us? Not anymore. That was taken before I closed the curtains. Damien was already moving, checking windows, adjusting blinds. He's making a point. He can reach you. He can document you. He can... Another photo posted. Me, leaving my apartment building 3 days ago. The timestamp was before any of this started. Then another. Me at the gallery opening. Another. Outside my studio window. Another. Getting on the bus to Damien's warehouse. Richard had been watching me for over a week. Oh God, I whispered. Damien pulled me away from the windows, into the interior hallway, where there were no sightlines. His face was murderous. Call Victor, he said into his phone. Now. Yes, I know it's late. I don't care. Richard's escalating. We need... He stopped, listening. When? How long ago? His expression made my blood freeze. What? I demanded. What happened? He lowered the phone. Someone just tried to access your studio. Victor stopped them, but what? They left something. A message. What kind of message? The kind that means we're out of time. 20 minutes later, I was looking at photos on Damien's laptop. My studio, photographed through the window, but someone had been inside. My paintings were rearranged. And on my easel, where I'd left a blank canvas, someone had painted a single image. A woman's face, dissolving into fragments. My style, my technique, my signature visual language. They copied me. I breathed. They're sending a message, Damien said grimly. That they understand your work. That they've studied you. That they can replicate you. Or replace me. His hand found my shoulder. That's not going to happen. How can you stop it? He has resources. He has money. He has nothing I don't have more of. Damien turned me to face him. But I need you to trust me, completely. Can you do that? I looked at his bandaged knuckles, his gray eyes, no longer carefully empty but burning with something fierce and protective. His face, which I'd somehow memorized in 3 impossible days. I don't trust easily, I said. I know. And you're asking me to trust the person who brought this danger to my door. Yes. That's insane. Yes. His hands framed my face. But you're still here. I was. God help me. I was. What happens now? I asked. Now I make Richard understand that you're not negotiable. That you're not leverage. That you're... He stopped, jaw working. What am I? Mine to protect, and I don't give up what's mine. The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it felt like safety wrapped in violence. I kissed him again, harder this time, pouring 3 days of fear and confusion and impossible attraction into it. He responded with the same desperate honesty, hands in my hair, body pressing mine against the wall. When we broke apart, I was trembling. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you careful." "What keeps you careful?" "You. Only you." I woke alone in Damien's bed. Not the guest room, but his actual room, where he'd carried me after I'd fallen asleep on the sofa. The sheets smelled like cedar and smoke. Morning light cut through half-closed blinds. My phone showed 17 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. My hands shook as I scrolled through them. No voicemails, just the calls themselves, coming in every 10 minutes from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. A test, or a threat. I found Damien in his office, a room I hadn't seen before. Smaller than the main living space, with walls lined with monitors showing security feeds. He sat at a desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in Russian now. When he saw me in the doorway, he ended the call. "You should be sleeping," he said. "Someone called me 17 times. His expression went dark. "Show me." I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the call log, jaw tightening with each entry. Burner phones. Untraceable. He set my phone down carefully. "He's escalating faster than I anticipated." "Why? What did you do at that meeting?" Damien was quiet for a moment, making some calculation behind his eyes. Then he turned one of the monitors toward me. Security footage from a dock nighttime, grainy. I watched Damien and 3 other men confront a larger group. The footage had no sound, but the body language was clear. Threats exchanged, weapons drawn but not fired. Then Damien walked away, and 2 of his men stayed behind. "What happened after you left?" I asked. "What needed to happen?" His voice was flat. "Richard's been using that dock to move merchandise I don't approve of. Drugs that destroy communities, children involved as mules. I told him to stop. He refused. So I made sure he couldn't use it anymore." "How?" He turned another monitor toward me. The same dock, hours later. Fire trucks spraying water on a burning warehouse. "You burned it?" I eliminated a problem. No apology in his tone. Richard had a choice. He made the wrong one. I should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from the casual admission of arson and probable violence. Instead, I found myself asking, did anyone get hurt? No one who didn't earn it. The distinction mattered. Somehow, impossibly, it mattered. "So now he's retaliating," I said, "by terrorizing me." "Yes, because he knows I care, and he thinks that's a vulnerability he can exploit." Damien stood, moved toward me. "He's wrong." "How is he wrong?" "I am a vulnerability." "No, you're a line in the sand." His hands found my waist. "Everyone in my world now knows touch you, and I burn everything they have." Richard tested that. He's currently discovering I meant it literally. "This is insane." "This is my life." He pulled me closer. "I told you I was dangerous. You told me a lot of things." I put my hands against his chest, feeling his heartbeat too fast, too hard. "You didn't tell me you'd start a war over me. Would you have believed me?" "No." "Then why does it matter?" "Because it did. Because somewhere between the accidentally liked photo and this moment, I'd started believing that Damien Cross, criminal, killer, carefully empty man, was telling me the truth." His phone rang. He checked it, expression shifting. "It's Richard." "Answer it," I said. On speaker. Damien's eyes searched mine. Then he accepted the call. "Richard, you burned my warehouse." Richard's voice was cold. 40 million in merchandise. 3 years of established channels. "Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand exactly what I've done." "Do you understand why?" "Because of the girl." A pause. "She must be remarkable." "She's not your concern. Everything about you is my concern when you destroy my property." Richard's voice sharpened. "I want compensation, and I want the girl, neither of which you'll receive." "Then we have a problem." "We've had a problem since you started moving fentanyl through residential neighborhoods. Since you started recruiting teenagers as couriers. Since you decided profit mattered more than community." Damien's voice was ice. "I gave you options. You chose poorly. And the girl chose poorly when she caught your attention." "The girl has a name," I said, surprising myself. "And I chose nothing. You involved me." Silence on the other end. Then, Elara Chen. "The painter. I've researched you. Working class background, scholarship to art school, currently living paycheck to paycheck, in a fourth-floor walk-up. A pause. What do you see in Damien that's worth this? The money? The protection? Or do you actually believe he cares? I believe he's honest, I said, which is more than I can say for you. Honest? Richard laughed. Did he tell you about the woman 3 years ago? The one who died because she got too close? Damien's hand tightened on my waist. Did he tell you her name was Sophia? That she was a journalist investigating his operations? That she promised she could keep herself safe? Richard's voice turned soft. They found her in Elliott Bay, the coroner said, drowning. But we both know better, don't we, Damien? The line went dead. I pulled away from Damien, blood roaring in my ears. Sophia. Elara. He said you cared about someone who died. He said you swore not to make that mistake again. Was that Sophia? Damien's face was carved from stone. Yes. How did she die? Exactly how Richard described. She was investigating shipping irregularities. Got too close to something she shouldn't have. They killed her and made it look like an accident. They? Not you? Not me. But I didn't protect her well enough. His voice cracked slightly. I thought love and security cameras were enough. I was wrong. I sank onto the office sofa, trying to process. So when you said I terrify you, I meant that history repeats itself. That I'm making the same mistake. That I should have stayed away from you the moment you liked that photo. But I was too selfish, too curious, he stopped, too desperate to be seen by someone who wouldn't look away. And now I'm in danger because of that selfishness. Yes, at least he was honest. I looked at the security monitor's feeds from the building entrance, the parking garage, the street outside, a gilded cage with high-definition surveillance. How does this end? I asked. With Richard understanding he can't win, or with Richard dead. The bluntness startled me. You'd kill him? If necessary. Damien crouched before me, forcing eye contact. I won't let history repeat itself. I won't lose you the way I lost Sophia, even if that means crossing lines I've tried not to cross. You've already crossed plenty of lines. Not this one. Not premeditated murder. Not yet. His hands covered mine. But I will, if it keeps you safe. I should have run. Should have called the police. Should have chosen ordinary danger over this extraordinary violence. Instead, I asked, what do you need me to do? Something shifted in his expression, relief and resignation. Stay here, stay safe. Let me handle Richard. That's not a plan. That's hiding. Sometimes hiding is smart. And sometimes it's cowardice. I stood, pulling him up with me. You said I notice things. You said I see what others miss. So let me help. Elara. I'm already involved. I'm already targeted. At least let me be useful instead of just protected. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. You're as stubborn as Sophia was. Is that why you care? I care because you like my 3-year-old photos and paint women dissolving and ask questions no one else does. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I care because you're still here when any sane person would have run. Maybe I'm not sane. Maybe we're both insane. He kissed me, then softer this time, like apology and promise combined. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. If I let you help, he said quietly, you follow every instruction. You don't improvise. You don't take risks. Agreed. And if things go wrong, they won't. But if they do, you run. You don't look back. You save yourself. Damien, promise me. I looked at his face, this carefully controlled man coming undone. I promise. It was a lie. We both knew it. The plan was simple, which made it terrifying. Richard wanted me. Wanted to use me against Damien. So we'd give him exactly what he wanted, but on our terms. The Northgate Gallery is hosting a private auction tonight, Damien explained, showing me the event details on his laptop. Richard will be there. He collects art, uses it for money laundering. It's public enough that he won't make an overt move, but private enough for conversation. And I'm supposed to what? Approach him? You're supposed to be bait, controlled bait. He pulled up a photo of the gallery's layout, exits marked in red. Victor and Elena will be positioned here and here. I'll be across the room. You'll engage Richard in conversation. Wearing this. He handed me a small device, looked like an expensive brooch, silver and abstract. Camera and microphone, he explained. We'll see and hear everything. If he threatens you, if he touches you, if anything feels wrong, you say the word dissolve. We extract you immediately. And if he doesn't threaten me, then you keep him talking, Get him comfortable. People reveal truths when they think they're in control. I turned the brooch over in my hands. What am I trying to get him to reveal? His next move. His connections. Anything that tells us how deep his organization goes. Damien's expression was grim, and whether he ordered Sophia's death directly or through intermediaries. You want revenge. I want justice. There's a difference. I wasn't sure there was. Not in this world. The dress Damien provided was gorgeous, deep emerald silk that somehow made my skin look luminous. Elena, his associate, had done my makeup and hair, transforming me from struggling artist to someone who belonged in Seattle's elite circles. You look beautiful, Damien said when I emerged from the bedroom. I look like someone else. Good, that's the point. But the way he looked at me suggested he saw through the costume. Remember, you're Ilara Chen, emerging artist. You're at the auction hoping to network. Richard approaches you, not the reverse. And if he doesn't approach, he will. I've made sure he knows you'll be there. We arrived separately, me in a town car with Victor driving, Damien in his own vehicle 15 minutes later. The Northgate Gallery was exactly what I expected. White walls, track lighting, people in expensive clothes admiring expensive art. I accepted a champagne flute I wouldn't drink and wandered through the exhibition. The featured artist was someone I vaguely recognized, abstract landscapes that sold for 6 figures. They're derivative, a voice said beside me. I turned. Richard Mercer stood there, impeccable in a gray suit, silver hair perfectly styled. Up close, he looked like someone's elegant grandfather. Nothing about him suggested the violence I knew he was capable of. Derivative of what? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Rothko, mostly, but without the emotional depth, just color and pretension. He extended a hand. Richard Mercer. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I shook his hand, feeling the brooch's camera capture everything. Ilara Chen. Ah yes, the painter, the one who creates those disturbing triptychs about consumption. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And the one currently under Damien Cross's protection. I'm not under anyone's protection. I'm just here to see art. Of course. And I'm here for the wine. He sipped his champagne. Shall we be honest with each other, Ilara? I find dishonesty tedious. Then honestly, why have you been having me followed? Because you matter to Damien. And things that matter to Damien are leverage I need to understand. He turned to face me fully. Did he tell you about Sophia? He told me you killed her. Did he? Richard looked genuinely surprised. How interesting. Because the truth is rather more complicated. Truth usually is. Sophia contacted me 6 months before she died. She was investigating Damien's shipping operations. She discovered something that disturbed her, inconsistencies in his manifests, destinations that didn't match paperwork. She thought I could help her expose him. My stomach tightened. I don't believe you. Of course you don't. Damien has convinced you he's some honorable criminal, a man with codes and principles. Richard's expression hardened. But men like Damien don't have principles. They have territories. And Sophia threatened his territory. If that's true, why didn't you help her? I tried, but she disappeared before I could arrange protection. 3 days later, she turned up in Elliott Bay. He paused. Damien told you rivals killed her. Did he mention that no rival organization claimed responsibility? That the method was suspiciously similar to how his own organization handles problems? I felt the brooch against my skin. Knew Damien was hearing this. You're suggesting Damien killed her himself? I'm suggesting the man you trust is very skilled at appearing to be something he's not. At making victims believe they're allies. At painting himself as protector when he's actually predator. Richard set his champagne glass on a passing waiter's tray. Sophia believed him too, right until the end. Why should I trust you over him? Because I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to think critically. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. This was taken 2 days before Sophia died. Notice the bruising on her wrist? The image showed a woman, dark hair, mid-30s, beautiful, laughing at some outdoor cafe. But there was a clear handprint-shaped bruise on her left wrist. That's from Damien, Richard said quietly. She told a mutual friend he'd grabbed her during an argument, that he'd been controlling, possessive, that she was starting to fear him. You're lying. Am I? Then why is Damien so desperate to keep you close? Why the penthouse lockdown? Why the security? Richard leaned closer. He's not protecting you from me, Ilara. He's making sure you can't run. My pulse was hammering. The gallery felt too hot, too crowded. Dissolve, I whispered. Victor appeared within seconds, hand on my elbow. Miss Chen, your car is ready. But Richard caught my other arm. One more thing. That warehouse Damien burned, it wasn't trafficking drugs. It was housing evidence, documents proving his involvement in Sophia's death. His grip tightened, and now that evidence is ash. Victor's hand moved to his jacket, warning. Richard released me. Think about it, Alara. Think about why a man destroys evidence. Think about why he needs you to stay close and dependent. He smiled, cold and terrible. And ask yourself if you're his protection detail or his prisoner. Victor led me out to the car. I climbed into the back seat, hands shaking, while the city blurred past the windows. The brooch felt heavy against my dress. Back at the penthouse, Damien was waiting. His face was carved from stone. Turn it off, I said, gesturing to the brooch. I need to talk to you. Really talk. Not on camera. He reached over, disabled the device. What did he tell you? That you killed Sophia. That you're controlling. That the warehouse was full of evidence against you, not drugs. I met his eyes. And I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. Because right now, I don't know what to believe. Damien was quiet for a long time. Then he walked to his liquor cabinet, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and handed me one. Sit, he said. I sat. Sophia and I were involved for 8 months, he began. She knew what I did, knew the risks. I told her everything more than I should have. I thought honesty would keep her safe. I was wrong. Did you hurt her? That bruise was from pulling her away from a car that almost hit her. She'd started getting reckless, pursuing leads without backup. I tried to stop her. She fought me. The bruise was accidental. His voice cracked slightly. I would never have deliberately hurt her, but Richard said. Richard is a liar who's skilled at manipulating truth. Yes, I destroyed that warehouse. No, it wasn't housing evidence against me. It was being used to cook fentanyl and package it for distribution to high schools. Children, Alara, 14-year-olds. His hands tightened around his glass. I burned it because Richard refused to stop. Because profit mattered more to him than lives. Then show me proof. Show me evidence that your version is true. What evidence would convince you? Documents I could have forged? Testimony from people in my organization? He set his glass down. You have to choose who to believe. Richard, who spent a week terrorizing you. Or me, who's trying to keep you alive despite every instinct that says I should let you go. Maybe I should go. Maybe you should. He looked at me with something raw in his expression. Maybe Richard's right that I'm holding you prisoner. Maybe I'm no better than he is. Maybe Sophia died because of me. And you're next. Do you believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. He stood, moved to the windows. I know I care about you more than I should. I know I'd burn the entire city to keep you safe. I know that makes me dangerous. Maybe not in the way Richard suggests, but dangerous nonetheless. I set my own glass down and went to him. Put my hand on his shoulder, felt the tension there. Tell me about Sophia's last day, I said quietly. Why? Because if you're lying, you'll trip up on details. If you're telling the truth, I'll hear it in your voice. So he told me about the phone call at 3 a.m., about finding her apartment empty, about 3 days of searching before the police called, about identifying her body and knowing with absolute certainty that someone had sent a message written in her death. I failed her, he said finally. I loved her, and I failed her, and now I'm terrified of failing you the same way. I turned him to face me. Looked at his eyes no longer carefully empty, just exhausted and haunted and honest. I believe you, I said. Why? Because Richard wants me afraid of you. He wants me isolated and doubting. That's not protection. That's manipulation. I took a breath. And because when you kissed me, I felt like I was being seen, not hunted. His hand came up to cup my face. You're making a choice to trust me. Yes. That's terrifying. Yes. I can't promise you safety. I can only promise honesty. Then tell me honestly, do you think we'll survive this? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I think we'll fight like hell to try. It wasn't a guarantee. But it was real. I kissed him, tasting whiskey and fear, and something like hope. Outside, Seattle glittered with lies and truth tangled together. Inside, 2 people chose each other, despite every reason not to. At 3 a.m., Damien's phone rang with the call that changed everything. We were still awake, neither of us could sleep after the gallery confrontation. I'd been sketching on his expensive couch while he worked on his laptop, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When his phone buzzed, his face went cold. "It's Elena," he said, answering. "What, when? How long ago?" A pause. "Lock it down. I'm coming now." He was up and moving before I could ask questions. "What happened?" "Richard's made his move. There's been an attack on my shipping office in Georgetown. 3 of my people are dead." His voice was ice. "He's escalating to open war." "Why now?" "Because he knows I care about you. Because he watched me destroy his warehouse and realized I'm not negotiating anymore. Because," he stopped at his bedroom door. "Because this is what happens when someone threatens what's mine. I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. Damien, no." He turned, and the look in his eyes was terrifying. "This isn't a discussion. Victor will stay with you. Elena will be outside. You will remain here where you're safe. While you do what? Kill Richard, if necessary." The admission hung between us. This was the line he'd talked about: premeditated murder. The crossing of a boundary he'd tried to avoid. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't become the monster Richard says you are. I've always been a monster, Alara. I've just hidden it better." He grabbed his jacket from the chair. "The difference is I choose who I protect with that monstrosity." He was gone before I could argue further. The penthouse felt like a tomb after he left. Victor positioned himself by the elevator, stone-faced and professional. I paced the living room, phone clutched in my hand, waiting for updates that didn't come. At 4:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Alara," Richard's voice. "I assume Damien's told you about Georgetown. What do you want?" "To make you an offer. One last chance before this gets uglier." He paused. "Leave Seattle. Tonight. I'll provide transportation, cash, a new start wherever you want. All you have to do is disappear. And if I refuse, then you'll be standing over another body in Elliott Bay. Except this time, it will be Damien's." My blood went cold. "You can't." "I can. I have 30 men to his 20. I have police on my payroll. I have judges, prosecutors, city officials. Damien is talented, but he's outnumbered." Richard's voice softened. "I don't want to kill him, Alara. I want him to understand that some territories aren't worth the cost. That some wars can't be won. You can end this by removing yourself from the equation. By running. By choosing life over pride." I looked at Victor, who was watching me with professional intensity. At the monitors showing empty hallways and quiet streets. At the city beyond the windows, full of violence I'd never had to see before. "I need time to think," I said. "You have until dawn. After that, the offer expires, and people start dying." The line went dead. Victor was at my side immediately. "What did he say?" I told him, watched his expression shift from professional to something harder. "You're not going anywhere," he said flatly. "It's not your decision. Mr. Cross gave me orders. You stay safe, even if that means his death?" Victor's jaw tightened. "Especially then." I stared at this man who'd shown me nothing but professional courtesy, and saw the absolute loyalty beneath. The kind of loyalty that would let his employer die rather than compromise a protection detail. "How long have you worked for Damien?" I asked. 6 years. "And in those 6 years, how many people has he killed?" Victor's expression didn't change. "That's not a question I can answer, but it's not 0. No, it's not 0. He paused. "But every single one deserved it. Every single one had hurt innocent people. Mr. Cross has lines he doesn't cross: children, civilians, people just trying to survive. Richard Mercer has no such lines. So I should trust Damien because he's the better monster? You should trust him because he'd rather die than let Richard touch you. That means something." It did. But I wasn't sure it meant what Victor thought. At 5:43 a.m., Damien returned. He was covered in soot and blood, none of it his. By the look of him, and his expression was murderous. 3 dead, he said without preamble. 7 injured. The building's a total loss. Richard left a calling card, literally, his business card, pinned to the wall with a knife through the center. "So it's definitely him." "Yes." Damien pulled off his jacket, dropped it on the floor. "And he's not subtle about his next move. One of my injured men said Richard was asking about this building, about security protocols, about you." "He called me," I said quietly. Damien froze. "When?" "An hour ago. He offered me an exit. Said I could leave Seattle, and he'd let you live." "And what did you say?" "That I needed time to think." Something in Damien's expression cracked. "You should take it." "What?" "The exit. The offer. You should take it. He moved to the windows, stared out at the pre-dawn city. This is escalating faster than I can control. Richard has more resources than I thought. More people, more reach. I can't guarantee your safety anymore. So you want me to run? I want you to survive. If that means running, then yes. His voice was raw. I won't be the reason you end up in Elliott Bay. I crossed to him, grabbed his arm, forced him to face me. And what about you? What happens if I leave? I handle Richard, permanently. You mean you kill him? Yes. And then what? You live with that forever? You become exactly what he said you were? I already am what he said I was. His hand covered mine. I've killed before, Alara. Not often, not casually, but when necessary. Richard is necessary. No, he's not. I gripped his shirt, pulled him closer. There has to be another way. There isn't. He's made that clear. Then we find proof. We expose him. We do nothing. You leave. I handle this. And maybe you get to live a normal life somewhere far from here. His forehead pressed against mine. Please, I can survive losing you. I can't survive getting you killed. I kissed him, then desperate and fierce, and tasting like smoke. When we broke apart, I said, I'm not leaving, I'm not running, and you're not killing Richard. Alara, we're going to be smart. We're going to use what we have. I pulled back, grabbed my phone. Richard thinks I'm considering his offer. That gives us until dawn. What can we do in... I checked the time. 90 minutes. Damien stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. You're serious. Completely. You should be packing. I should be helping. I met his eyes. You said I notice things. So let me notice. What are we missing about Richard? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to his laptop, pulled up files I'd never seen before. Richard's organization runs on reputation, he said slowly. He's untouchable because everyone believes he's untouchable. But his actual power base is smaller than he presents. Most of his connections are just rumors he's carefully cultivated. So if we puncture the reputation, the actual power crumbles. But doing that requires exposing something he can't deny or explain away. Damien scrolled through documents. Something public, documented, undeniable. Like the gallery, I said suddenly. He was there. He approached me. He made threats all caught on the brooch camera. A camera he knew about. He was careful not to say anything explicitly incriminating, but he did say something. I grabbed the laptop, pulled up the recording. Here, when he talked about Sophia, he admitted to having contact with her before her death, to knowing she was investigating you. That makes him a material witness who never came forward. The police will want to know why. Damien's expression shifted. It's not proof of murder, but it's enough to open questions, to make people doubt his story. And doubt is enough to damage reputation, not enough to stop him completely, but enough to weaken his position, make his organization question his judgment. Damien was already typing. If I send this to the right people, journalists, prosecutors who aren't in his pocket, rival organizations who'd love to see him vulnerable, then he becomes the target instead of you. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was something other than more death. We worked through the dawn, sending files, making calls, building a case not for court but for the streets. By the time the sun broke over Elliott Bay, Richard Mercer's carefully constructed reputation was beginning to crack. At 7:02 a.m., Damien's phone rang. Richard, he said, answering. Then, to me, he wants to meet. Just you? Both of us. Damien's expression was grim. He says it's time to end this. Where? The original dock. Where Sophia died, of course. Richard would choose symbolism over safety. We're going, I said before Damien could refuse. It's obviously a trap. Everything's a trap. At least this one we see coming. He looked at me, this carefully controlled man I'd somehow fallen for in the span of a week. You're terrifyingly brave. I learned from you. That's what worries me. But he didn't tell me no. The dock where Sophia died looked exactly like every other industrial waterfront space, weathered wood, rusted equipment, the smell of salt and rot. Morning fog still clung to the water, making everything feel dreamlike and dangerous. Richard stood at the far end, flanked by two men I didn't recognize. He looked tired. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked his actual age. Damien and I approached slowly, Victor staying with the car per Damien's instructions. I wore jeans and a jacket, dressed for running if necessary. The brooch was pinned to my collar insurance. "Elara," Richard greeted. "I see you've made your choice." "I've made several choices," I said, most of them surprisingly reckless. "Indeed." He turned to Damien. "You've been busy this morning, sending files to my competitors, making phone calls to journalists. Quite the PR campaign." "You gave me no choice," Damien said flatly. "I gave you several choices. You simply didn't like them." Richard's expression hardened. "You've made me look weak, Damien. That's unforgivable in our world." "Then perhaps you should have chosen a different world." The tension ratcheted up. Richard's men shifted positions, subtle, but meaningful. I felt Damien's hand brush mine, a warning to stay alert. "I want to show you something," Richard said. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Insurance, you might call it." Damien took it carefully. Inside were photographs recent, high resolution. Me leaving my studio, me at the gallery opening, me entering Damien's building. But there was one more photo that made my blood freeze. My mother. Outside her apartment in Portland. Yesterday's date stamp. "You followed her?" I breathed. "I documented her." "There's a difference." Richard's smile was cold. "She's lovely, your mother. Librarian, yes? Volunteers at a women's shelter on weekends. Very admirable." Rage flooded through me, hot and clarifying. "If you touch her, I won't need to. That's the point." Richard stepped closer. "You've damaged my reputation, Damien. Those files you sent will take months to undo. But they're not fatal. What would be fatal is if something happened to the civilian family members of people in your organization. If mothers started disappearing. If the conflict you started expanded to include innocents." "You wouldn't," Damien said. But I could hear the doubt. "Wouldn't I? You burned my warehouse. Killed 3 of my people last night. Your people attacked my office. After you destroyed $40 million in property." Richard's composure cracked. "You escalated this, Damien. You made it personal, so now I'm making it personal too." The fog shifted, revealing more of the dock. I could see the water dark, cold, indifferent. The place where Sophia had died, where Richard had brought us for maximum psychological impact. "What do you want?" I asked. "Tell us what ends this." Richard looked at me with something like respect. Direct. I like that. He pulled out his phone. "I want a confession. From Damien. Recorded. Admitting to the warehouse arson, the deaths of my people, and his role in Sophia's murder investigation." "I didn't kill Sophia," Damien said. "But you didn't save her either. And that's close enough for the story I'll tell." Richard smiled. "Give me the confession. Let me use it to rebuild my reputation. Or I start with Elara's mother, and work my way through everyone you care about." The dock was silent except for water lapping against pilings. "No," I said. Both men looked at me. "No confession, no capitulation, no more violence." I stepped forward, positioning myself between them. "You want to end this, Richard? Then let's actually end it, not with threats or murders or escalation. With truth." "Truth is overrated," Richard said. "Maybe in your world, but there are people who still care about it." I pulled out my phone, including Detective Sarah Martinez of Seattle PD, who's been investigating Sophia's death for 3 years, who just received an anonymous tip about a material witness who never came forward. Richard's expression shifted. "You called the police?" "Not me. Damien sent the recording of you admitting contact with Sophia, along with documentation of your dock operations, along with statements from people who worked for you and got tired of the drugs and the children and the things you told them were just business." I looked at Damien. "You did do that, right?" Something flickered in his eyes, surprise and approval. "This morning, before we came here. So you see, Richard, you don't have leverage anymore. You have exposure. The police are coming. Your organization knows you've been investigated. Your reputation is damaged regardless of what happens on this dock." I took a breath. "And my mother has been in protective custody since last night, because Damien anticipated you'd try exactly this." It was partially a bluff. I'd called my mother at 6 a.m. and told her to stay with her sister. Not quite protective custody, but close enough to sound official. Richard stared at me. Then, slowly, he laughed. "You magnificent little fool," he said. "You've called the police on both of us. You realize that, don't you? Whatever evidence you provided about me will also expose Damien." "I know," I said quietly. Damien's hand found mine, squeezed. Understanding what I'd done, that I'd chosen truth over his protection, Consequences over safety. So what now? Richard asked. We all go to prison? That's your solution? My solution is we stop pretending there are winners in this scenario. You've committed crimes. So has Damien. The difference is Damien's trying to change. Trying to protect people instead of exploiting them. Trying to be honest about what he is. I looked between them. You can either keep fighting until everyone loses, or you can accept that the game's over. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to his men. Leave us. They hesitated but obeyed, walking back toward the parking area. You're either very brave or very stupid, Richard said to me. I haven't decided which. Both, probably. He almost smiled. Then he looked at Damien. You've found yourself an interesting one. I know. She'll be your downfall. Possibly. But she'll be an honest downfall. Damien's arm came around my waist. Which is more than I'd get with you. Richard nodded slowly. Then he extended his hand. 6 months. I'll give you 6 months to clean up your operations, reorganize, get out of anything that involves children or heavy drugs. After that, Seattle splits. You keep the North, I keep the South. We stay out of each other's territories. And if I refuse, then we fight until one of us is dead, and the police get very interested in the survivor. Richard's expression hardened. But I'm tired, Damien. This war benefits neither of us. So I'm offering détente. For Sophia's memory, if nothing else. The name hung between them, a ghost demanding acknowledgement. Damien looked at me. I nodded. He shook Richard's hand. 6 months. Good. Richard turned to leave, then stopped. Elara. Yes? Your paintings. The dissolving woman. I understand them now. He gestured between us. You were afraid of being consumed. Instead, you did the consuming. You changed him. That's more dangerous than any violence I could threaten. He was gone before I could respond. We stood on the dock for a long time after, watching fog burn off the water. Detective Martinez is going to want to interview me, Damien said eventually. I know. I could face charges. Probably will face charges. I know. You just destroyed any chance of plausible deniability I had. I know. I turned to face him. But I couldn't watch you become what Richard said you were. Couldn't watch you kill someone and live with it forever. Couldn't. I stopped. I couldn't dissolve who you are into what survival required. He pulled me close, chin resting on my head. You saved me by exposing me. That's either poetic or insane. Definitely both. I could go to prison. Then I'll visit. I'll paint you while you serve time for arson and racketeering and whatever else they can prove. I pulled back to meet his eyes. But at least you'll be alive. And at least you won't have more deaths on your conscience. You're too good for this world. I'm really not. I just fell for someone who made me want to try. He kissed me, then soft and grateful and tasting like salt air. When we broke apart, the sun had burned through the fog completely. What now? I asked. Now we face consequences. Together. He took my hand. And hope that honesty counts for something. It has to. Otherwise, what's the point? We walked back to the car, where Victor waited with his professional composure slightly cracked. Behind us, Elliott Bay glittered in the morning light, beautiful and indifferent, and somehow less frightening than it had been. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Martinez. Miss Chen, we need to talk. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., precinct. Bring Mr. Cross. I showed Damien. He read it and nodded. Tomorrow, he said. We face tomorrow. Together. Together. 3 months later. The gallery show was small, just my work. 10 new pieces, all exploring the same theme. Transformation through exposure. Damien stood beside me, hand at the small of my back. He'd been charged with arson and several counts of racketeering, but his cooperation with investigators had earned him probation instead of prison time. Richard Mercer had faced similar charges and taken a plea deal. The war had ended not with blood but with bureaucracy. That one's my favorite, Damien said, gesturing to a painting of 2 figures, one dissolving, one solidifying, reaching toward each other. It's called The Honest Consumption, I said. You're still obsessed with being consumed. No. Now I'm obsessed with consuming back. I looked at him. With changing what tries to change me. You did change me. Good. You needed it. He laughed, a sound I was still getting used to hearing. The careful emptiness had mostly disappeared, replaced by something more real and more complicated. My mother appeared with champagne, having made the trip from Portland. Sweetheart, people are asking about the triptych. Should I tell them it's already sold? It's not sold, Mom. Then why is there a red dot? I glanced at Damien, who looked suspiciously innocent. You didn't. I did. It's going in my office, as a reminder. Of what? That being seen completely is terrifying. But it's also the only thing worth having. Victor approached with Elena, both looking uncomfortable in gallery-appropriate clothing. Boss, Richard Mercer just arrived. We all turned. Richard stood at the entrance, surveying the exhibition with a critic's eye. He caught sight of us and approached slowly. Alara, he greeted. Impressive work, very different from the originals. People change, I said carefully. So they do. He turned to Damien. I hear congratulations are in order. Probation instead of prison. You must have made quite the impression. I told the truth. It helps. A novel concept. Richard's expression was unreadable. I wanted to say something, about Sophia. We all went quiet. I did have contact with her before she died, Richard continued. But I didn't kill her. And I don't know who did. That's the truth, whether you believe it or not. He paused. I used her death, weaponized it against you. That was wrong. Damien nodded slowly. Thank you for saying so. Don't thank me. I'm not looking for redemption. Richard straightened his jacket. I'm simply trying to be honest. Apparently that's fashionable now. He left before we could respond. I leaned into Damien's side. Think he meant it? Does it matter? Maybe not, but I hope he did. You're too forgiving. One of us has to be. He kissed my temple. Fair point. That night, back in what was now our apartment, a compromise between his penthouse and my studio, I stood at the window watching Seattle's lights. What are you thinking? Damien asked from the kitchen. That I accidentally liked a photo from 3 years ago, and it changed everything. Regret it? I turned to face him. He'd lost the careful control, the empty eyes, the armor he'd worn like a second skin. Now he just looked like a man who'd survived violence and chosen honesty, who'd let himself be seen and hadn't dissolved. Not even a little bit, I said. Even though I'm a criminal on probation who destroyed your normal life, especially because of that. I crossed to him. Normal life was boring. This is terrifying and beautiful and real. You're insane. You say that like it's a problem. He pulled me close. And we stood in the kitchen with dishes in the sink and art supplies scattered across the counter and the weight of consequences we'd chosen together. I love you, he said quietly. I probably shouldn't. It's dangerous and complicated, and all the things I swore I'd avoid. But I do. My heart did something complicated. I love you too, despite all the reasons I shouldn't. Because I'm a criminal? Because you're honest about being one. Because you changed. Because you let me see you. I kissed him softly. Because you're the man who bakes Danish pastries and burns warehouses and chooses probation over violence. That's a very specific list. You're a very specific person. We stood there as the city moved around us, ordinary people with ordinary problems, completely unaware that sometimes love starts with a digital mistake and ends with choosing truth over safety. Thank you, Damien said against my hair. For what? For stalking me. I laughed. I wasn't stalking. I was researching. At 11:47 p.m., while scrolling 3 years deep into my Instagram, the cat jumped. I know. You blamed the cat. His arms tightened. Best mistake you ever made. Second best, I corrected. The best mistake was choosing to stay. No regrets? None. I pulled back to meet his eyes. You? Only that I didn't like your photo first. Outside, Seattle did what it always did. Rain fell. Ferries crossed the bay. People made choices good and bad and somewhere in between. Inside, 2 people who'd been carefully empty filled each other with something honest. And that, impossibly, was enough.